The judiciary is the weakest branch. It holds neither the purse nor the sword, yet it still constrains outcomes. It has near zero enforcement capacity. It cannot fund programs, command officers, or arrest citizens directly today. Yet through information inputs and written rulings, it claims the power to delete other branches' outputs. How does a module with no physical force become the final constraint on an entire political system? Judicial review emerges as a protocol. Courts claim authority to invalidate incompatible rules across branches. This episode isolates the mechanism, not the personalities, how a court converts conflict into binding precedent. Start with the constraint. Courts have no budget, no army, and depend on voluntary compliance. Their leverage is procedural. They can delay, formalize facts, and output decisions with durable formatting. Precedent is a compression tool. One ruling reduces uncertainty for many future disputes across the network. The precedent also centralizes meaning. The interpreter's outputs become constraints for elected branches over time. So judicial review is a trade. Stability of meaning versus concentration of interpretive control. For the trade to work, review must appear rule-based, not coalition-based, even under partisan pressure. The system needs a test case that forces the question, who can say what the Constitution permits? That test arises during a transferred boundary, when paperwork, appointments, and authority shift between administrations. March 1801. Executive custody changes hands, and some signed commissions remain undelivered in administrative transit. A commission is a physical token signed, sealed, recorded. Without handoff, the transaction remains visibly incomplete outside. If custody rules are unclear, executives can nullify prior outputs simply by withholding physical delivery. That creates an implementation conflict. Does signature complete the appointment, or does delivery complete it? The dispute is rooted to courts because courts specialize in defining procedure when branches contest boundaries. This is the core. Courts can stabilize interfaces by declaring which steps in a pipeline are binding. The petition asks for a writ of mandamus, a command that forces an executive officer to act. Mandamus is high friction. It tests whether judicial outputs can control executive behavior in real time. If the court orders action and Jefferson's executive ignores it, the judiciary degrades into an advisory channel. So the court needs a strategy: claim interpretive authority without triggering an immediate enforcement showdown. Strategy begins with jurisdiction. Courts must first confirm they are authorized to output a binding command. Jurisdiction is a gate. Without it, the case cannot become a precedent, regardless of merits. The Constitution lists the Supreme Court's original jurisdiction. Congress can regulate the rest by statute. The petitioner relies on a statute that appears to expand the court's original jurisdiction for mandamus. If statute and Constitution conflict, authority loops. A lower rule claims power to redefine the higher rule. The court can resolve recursion by ranking sources: Constitution above statute, then statute above executive instruction. Ranking implies a power to declare a statute incompatible, and therefore inactive in that case. That power is judicial review, expressed as a logic step inside jurisdiction analysis, not as a slogan. Notice the design. The court chooses a path that avoids ordering the executive, yet still asserts supremacy of meaning. It can say, a right exists, but also say, no jurisdiction exists, preventing a direct enforcement contest. This split output is a safety design. It builds authority while minimizing immediate compliance risk. The court defines the appointment token as valid once signed and sealed, even if delivery was interrupted. Then it defines the remedy layer. Legal rights imply legal remedies, or the system cannot self-correct. But it gates remedies through jurisdiction. converting an individual complaint into a constitutional ranking decision instead. The statute's jurisdiction clause is treated as incompatible with the Constitution's original jurisdiction list. Therefore, the court denies mandamus, avoiding a direct command to the executive while establishing a new hierarchy. In systems terms, the court uses the case as a bootstrap. It validates its own interpreter function. Bootstrapping works because it appears incidental, a technical step needed to resolve jurisdiction, not a power grab. The output is durable because it is written as general rule, not as a one-off exception. Once written, the rule becomes a reference point. Later actors must argue within its frame to stay credible. Compliance is induced through repetition. Each future case cites the prior output, normalizing the interpreter role. The court's power is informational. It controls the canonical explanation of rules, shaping downstream behavior indirectly. This reduces coordination drift. States and agencies can align to a single interpretation rather than local improvisation. But alignment also shifts leverage. Litigants and officials route conflicts to courts because courts can bind meaning. So the judiciary becomes a control surface, a place where policy is constrained through interpretive procedure. Importantly, review does not require constant intervention. It works by changing expectations of what survives challenge. Legislators anticipate review, drafting with fewer contradictions, or embedding ambiguity to preserve flexibility under scrutiny. Executives anticipate review too, preferring actions that can be defended as consistent with statutory and constitutional text. The result is slower change. Policy must pass not only elections and votes, but interpretive stability tests. Slower change reduces volatility, yet it can freeze mistakes, because correction requires another case and another ruling. Review also changes incentives for minorities. Losing in politics can be rerouted into legal challenges seeking reversal. That rerouting can stabilize conflict by proceduralizing it, but it also shifts power toward legal specialists. Courts become a specialized interface. Arguments must match doctrine, precedent formats, and admissible evidence constraints. So judicial review builds a new bottleneck. Access to the interpreter requires time, money, and procedural navigation. Bottlenecks are not accidents, they are governance tools that control throughput of disputes into binding outcomes. When throughput is limited, only some conflicts receive definitive interpretation, leaving others in discretionary gray zones. Gray zones expand executive discretion because agencies act first and courts may review only later, if at all. Review is therefore a delayed constraint. It shapes behavior mostly through anticipated future reversal costs. Anticipation requires credibility. The court must survive political backlash, or its threats are discounted by actors. Credibility comes from strategy. Avoid orders that cannot be enforced, and choose holdings that others can accept. Marbury demonstrates that strategy. The court asserts constitutional ranking while withholding a command that invites refusal. The result is a low-conflict precedent. It binds future reasoning without demanding immediate executive compliance. Over time, low-conflict precedents accumulate into a high-impact constraint layer across policy domains and institutions. That layer is not elected, but it is not external. It is produced inside the constitutional machine itself. Judicial review therefore solves one problem. Binding meaning reduces drift and stabilizes cross-branch interfaces. But it introduces another. Interpretation becomes a scarce resource controlled by a small, insulated group. Scarcity creates queuing. Cases wait, conflicts persist, and actors exploit delay as a tactical variable. Tactical delay interacts with elections. Coalitions time litigation to favorable courts, favorable executives, or favorable Congresses. This creates a new competition surface, not only winning votes, but shaping the interpreter's composition and docket. Appointments become long-term leverage because judges persist across multiple election cycles and coalition turnovers. So judicial review shifts politics into staffing. controlling the interpreter can matter as much as controlling legislation. The system evolves, branches fight through procedure, jurisdiction, and doctrine rather than through direct enforcement conflict. This is a form of control, not centralized command, but centralized meaning that constrains decentralized action. Meaning control can scale power. If federal rules bind interpretation, federal capacity grows without new votes. Interpretations don't just secure rights, they secure assets, and a growing economy demands uniform rules for commerce. Uniform rules require interpretation authority, because the text cannot anticipate every transaction pattern in a growing network. So courts become a scaling device. They standardize categories, define boundaries, and reduce transaction uncertainty. Standardization increases throughput, but it can override local variation, shifting authority away from states gradually. That returns to the season's core tension. Coordination requires shared rules. Shared rules can become control. Judicial review is one of those shared rule mechanisms built to keep coordination stable across time. The paradox is persistent. An arbiter strong enough to bind others becomes a center of power itself. The system mitigates that risk through procedure, standing, jurisdiction, timing, and narrow holdings limit outputs. Those limits act as throttles, controlling how often courts can rewrite practical meaning in governance. Yet throttles also delay correction, letting questionable practices persist until a case successfully reaches review. So review is neither constant control nor pure neutrality. It is a selective constraint mechanism. Marbury sets the template: assert ranking of rules, avoid unenforceable commands, and build legitimacy through repetition. Once the template exists, later courts can expand influence by applying the same logic to new domains. Expansion does not always require new text. It can come from broader interpretations of existing constitutional categories. That makes interpretation a growth engine. Federal power can scale through meaning before it scales through statutes. With a stable interpreter, the federal system can coordinate across states more tightly, reducing drift and duplication. But tighter coordination increases control concerns because binding interpretations constrain local autonomy even without new enforcement. The season's logic continues. Every solution adds capacity, and every added capacity needs a limiter. Judicial review is a limiter on legislation and executive discretion, but it creates a new limiter problem itself. That problem becomes the next arena: economic coordination, national finance, and the infrastructure of federal capacity. When money and commerce scale, disputes multiply, and courts must decide which federal tools are permitted. Those decisions will define implied powers, what government can build beyond explicit text to coordinate at scale. Judicial review begins as a safeguard, but it becomes a design lever shaping how the federal machine grows. Episode 07 closes. Meaning is now centralized enough to enable new instruments, and new instruments will be contested. Next pressure point: the national bank can implied powers finance as coordination infrastructure and constitutional constraint. Next, implied powers bank, commerce, and federal credit expand capacity, and re-trigger controlled debates.